Hello everybody. This morning we're going to continue our series of video lectures. But first I'd like to discuss why we've moved on to this method of lecture. The first is speed. Oftentimes in our Zoom lectures, and I think it's important to involve everybody in the lecture, it's part of the learning process, but in those situations, we do spend a lot of time I spend a lot of time waiting for a correct answer. And it is important, as I mentioned, but at the same time, it does cut short our class time. Using these video lectures, I find it's much easier to move at a consistent pace. We're able to cover more material, which ultimately will benefit you because you will have a deeper knowledge base from which to draw from in the future. The second is, sadly, reliability. Power has been an issue this semester. People have connection problems consistently. Most of you are now in Korea, some of you are not. Most of you have fast internet connection speeds, some of you do not. If connectivity is a problem, using the Zoom lectures, oftentimes through no fault of your own, you would be missing part of the lecture. Because this system is on, this series of lectures will be on YouTube, it's much easier for you to access if you're not able to access it directly during class. We will talk about attendance shortly. And if you're not able to answer it, if you're not able to access it during class, that will affect your attendance, but it exists for you to check in the future if that is the situation, if you are interested in the subject matter. The last one is replayability. We are approaching midterm exams. They will happen in approximately 3 weeks. That gives us 2 more weeks of lectures. During that time, we will have covered quite a bit of material. We will have reviewed briefly a lot of our first semester material, and also we will have covered not just lean systems, but the next chapter as well. If you are trying to review prior to the midterm exam, it's very difficult to do if you're looking at a 5-week-old PPT. It's very difficult for you to remember the examples I've used, which I would like to remind you will be considered valid testing material. Everything we cover in the classroom can, and most likely in some way, be included on the midterm and final exam. If you have access to these YouTube videos, it gives you an opportunity to replay and rewatch some of the material that might have possibly been unclear the first time around. So again, we've moved on to this series for 3 reasons. The first, speed. We can move more consistently through the material. 2, reliability. This coronavirus has necessitated us to adapt to a world where we won't necessarily be able to meet each other face to face. And in that situation, we do not necessarily always have consistent internet connections. Because this is reliable, it's permanently on YouTube, you will be able to access this information in the future. Finally, number 3, replayability. When you're reviewing, it's often very helpful to have access to the original source material. Using these videos, you can go back and you can rewatch them, and you can cover material that A, might have been unclear, or B, you simply didn't follow along with. So again, 3 reasons we've moved on. Or 3 reasons we've adapted this strategy: speed, reliability, and replayability. Again, if you have any questions regarding this, while watching this video, I am always available on Kakao. If you ask me something, I am available to answer your questions. Moving on, we're going to begin today's class with a quick review of last class. So last class, specifically, we talked about how waste cripples. Now, waste is essentially anything that does not generate revenue for us. As a business, our main goal is to generate revenue and accordingly profit. If we spend money or time elsewhere, if we spend money on something or time on something that doesn't generate revenue or profit for our company, that is considered waste. And that is something that can be harmful, something that is harmful to our operation. We want at all times to be using all of the efforts we provide to generate revenue and profit. If it's not, that is wasteful. So let's talk about the first way. Number one, overproduction. And this is material that we've covered in our last class, but we're reviewing now. Overproduction is harmful because, number one, it's difficult to find defects. When we're reviewing or we're quality checking one product, it's very easy to see if any defects have occurred. If we're quality checking 10 products, it becomes exponentially harder. 110, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, etc. The more products we have to quality check, the more difficult it becomes. If we're producing more than we should, we are making our jobs more difficult. We're making quality control more difficult. So number one, it's difficult to find defects. Number two, and there's a second reason to avoid overproduction, specifically excess inventory. If we are in a situation where we're producing more than we intend to sell in the immediate future, those goods have to be stored somewhere. If we're storing those goods, by definition, we're not using them, we are occupying space that could be used more efficiently to generate revenue. Inventory, when sold, generates revenue. Inventory, when stored, does not. That is, by definition, waste. So the first type of waste is overproduction. The second is inappropriate processing. Now, inappropriate processing is when we do not produce as efficiently as possible. It can take several forms. If we're making drip coffee with an espresso machine, if we're producing, very simply, if we're doing arts and crafts, we have a working pair of old scissors, but we go out and we purchase a brand new, expensive pair of titanium scissors. Are they better? Yes. But we already had working tools that would allow us to do what we wanted to do. By definition, this is inappropriate processing. It's wasteful spending because it wasn't necessary and it doesn't generate extra revenue. In a situation where a new machine allows us to increase production, that wouldn't be inappropriate processing. However, in a scenario where the old machine does the job acceptably and at the same level as a new machine, we should at all times avoid the new machine because that is inappropriate processing. The basic rule is we want to use the oldest, the simplest, and the cheapest processing methods possible. As long as they're working at the same level as reliable, essentially, plus or minus, essentially at the same level as a new good, purchasing a new good is inefficient. All right, number 3. We have waiting waste. Waiting waste occurs when products are not processed immediately. If a product sits idle somewhere during the production process, that is by definition a wasteful situation. So last class I talked about if a McDonald's burger is placed on the tray but the fries are not yet ready, that burger is sitting there idle, it's not being used, and that by definition is wasteful. Let's look at a car example. If, for example, I assemble an entire car, but I have a situation where tires were delivered late. I have a car, but I have no tires to put on the car. That car, number 1, must... Oh, sorry everyone. Small technical difficulty there. However, let me continue. If a car with no tires is produced and tires aren't available, that car sits idle. That car sits in a scenario where it is not generating revenue, it is not generating profit, and it must be kept in inventory. This is wasteful. So anytime a product is not processed immediately, time is being wasted, waste is occurring. Moving on to number 4. The fourth type of good the fourth type of waste that occurs, and we talked about it again last class, is transportation. From last class, if you remember, or in general, think about it for yourselves. Why is transportation wasteful? One somewhat confusing aspect of this is that, as I said before, at all times, our goal as an organization is to generate revenue, generate profit. If we're not using all resources to do that, very simply, that is wasteful. However, in a transportation situation, it might seem like goods being transported for sale is generating revenue. Goods have to arrive in order to be sold. If they don't arrive, they can't be sold. If they can't be sold, they can't generate revenue for us. However, the key point is that any transportation, any at all, will detract from our bottom line. Anytime that goods are being transported, it's a delay, so it's waiting that occurs between sales points and revenue generation. Also, with transportation, we have to remember our ideal scenario, it's unrealistic in real life, but our ideal scenario is quite simply to sell at the point of manufacture. We make it, we sell it on the spot. That's an ideal scenario. And a lot of waste, as we review here, as we will continue to review, waste is inevitable. It's something that can't really be avoided because no production process is perfect. So waiting does occur. We cannot know exactly how much we produce or how much we will sell 99% of the time. So overproduction will occur in most situations. We cannot guarantee we're always using the simplest, oldest, cheapest production method, so inappropriate processing will occur. Just like transportation, very rarely can we sell at the point of manufacture. Transportation is inevitable. We have to get the good to where it has to go. However, the further it is transported, the more waste that is generated. That is fact. Transportation is harmful for two reasons. One, there's no value added. As I said before, the goal of a business is to add value, to create a reason, value, why customers should buy your product. Transportation from manufacturing point to sales point is not in any way creating value for the customer. It doesn't help them. They don't ever consider how far a good had to be transported. Instead, they just assume the product arrives normally. So no value added detracts from our goal as an organization. Number two, chance for damage. The farther a good is transported, the greater the chance that it may be damaged in the process. If a good is being transported, you purchase a burger is made, a burger is brought to the front counter, there is a very small chance it will be dropped on the floor, but there is a chance. Imagine that burger had to go to Australia from here, from South Korea. It would be sent to a distribution center, sent to the airport, flown to Australia, unloaded, sent to a distribution center, and finally delivered to the customer. In that scenario, 6 or 7 different ways it can be dropped, as opposed to walking 2 meters to the front counter. The further a good is transported, the greater the possibility exists for damage. Next. Motion is waste. This is similar to transportation, but slightly different. Whenever we are producing, whenever we are serving, we want to limit the motion that occurs. If I am making a meal, I'm producing a meal. Every time I bend down, every time I reach up, the potential for damage increases exponentially. We want all of the goods as close to the production point as possible. If we're moving beyond that, we are decreasing efficiency. In the service industry, the further we have to walk to serve customers, the more we waste. In the production industry, the less efficient the plant is set up, the less efficient the production process becomes. Number 6, and we touched on this briefly with overproduction, but inventory is waste for 2 reasons. The first, as we discussed, is because it consumes space. Space in any scenario is or costs money. If we own the land, maybe it could be used more productively. If we don't own the land, we're probably paying, well, we definitely are paying rent. So we have to think, anytime we're storing goods that are not immediately for sale, that inevitably is wasteful. So number 1, it consumes space. As I mentioned earlier with overproduction, when we have larger inventories, it's very difficult to find defects. Also, if we're producing in large quantities, maybe a defect occurs in every single product. But because we're producing in such large quantities, it's difficult to identify early on any defects that might occur. So inventory consumes space and it hides defects. Number 7, as we've mentioned time and time again, defects are wasteful. And defects are wasteful for 2 reasons. Number 1, they might require reworking. If a product has been produced, we notice a mistake was made, and we have to go back and change it. That is wasted time and wasted effort, potentially wasted money, because it was not ready for sale initially. Even a more serious situation is the good, it cannot be reworked. It is scrap. We've produced something, it's ready to go, but sadly, it can't be used. It is scrap. A scenario is, I make a coffee. I work at Starbucks, I make a coffee. The customer the customer orders no milk, and I put milk in the coffee. Can I take that milk out? Can I rework the product? No. It's been added. It's inevitably part of the process. Accordingly, we have to very simply dump that coffee in the garbage. That is scrap. We've wasted milk, we've wasted coffee, we've wasted time, and we've wasted effort. All 4 ultimately hurt our organization as a group. Number 8, the last one. Underutilization of resources. With resources, if we have something, an employee, a good, space, etc., these are resources that we have that we pay for. If an employee is at work, we are paying them. If we have space in the shop, in the factory, we're paying for that. If we have goods that will become end products, we are paying for that. By definition, to maximize our revenue, to maximize our profit, we should use all of these resources at their full capacity. We need, or to be as efficient as possible, we need to be in a scenario where everything is being used all the time. If not, by definition, this is wasteful. Like everything else, theoretically, underutilization of resources can be avoided. In the real world, it's almost impossible. We cannot use all our employees at all times. We cannot use all resources immediately. And we cannot maximize efficiency in a theoretical concept in terms of space. But the less we use of each, the more we use of each, the more efficient we become. So, for each of these 8 types of waste, theoretically it's possible to eliminate them, but realistically, in the real world, we want to focus not on elimination, but minimization. If we can minimize each of these, our operation becomes leaner, our operation becomes more efficient, and our operation gets to a point where we are moving products from the beginning stage to the customer as quickly, as cheaply, as space effectively as possible. And that is always helpful to any organization. Some organizations specialize in this, others may not specialize, but each organization should, whenever possible, try to be as lean as possible. These are the core ideas guiding lean systems. Let's talk about some strategic characteristics. Now, when I say strategic characteristics, what I mean is these are the characteristics guiding lean system strategy. In order to follow a lean systems approach, in order to minimize waste, we need to have a couple core characteristics, strategic characteristics, rules that guide our day-to-day operations, rules that guide our big picture operations. Without focusing on these basic ideas, waste occurs, our system becomes less lean, we generate less revenue and less profit for the time, effort, and funds we put into the business. The first one is close supplier ties. In order to be as efficient as possible, we have a lot of the waste that we talked about over here can be minimized if we have a very close, comfortable, efficient relationship with suppliers. Overproduction. We will produce at an appropriate level if we don't have to worry about parts coming into the factory, ingredients coming into the service industry, workers arriving on time. If we have a good relationship with our suppliers, overproduction can be minimized. Waiting. Also, our third type of waste, waiting, can be minimized if we have, or in a scenario where we have close relationships with our suppliers. For example, when all the products we need are immediately available for production for any good, we will naturally be able to produce more efficiently. But that relies on all those goods being available when we need them. The only way that happens is with close supplier ties. Inventory, again, inventory and underutilization of resources. If we have exactly what we need, we produce exactly what we expect to sell, we minimize our excess inventory. Also, if in the store, in the shop, in the organization, if we know when we need something it will be available, we don't need to keep production resources on hand. We know our supplier will get it to us, and so we know that we don't need to store a lot of excess material. Underutilization of resources, when we have no goods to process, workers are not being used, machines are not being used. We don't want to overproduce, but if we have not enough goods to produce, we're going to be underutilizing the resources we do have. So, because we have a close relationship with our supplier, we can focus on low inventory levels. We can keep as small a number of goods on hand as is possible to meet our immediate demand. That only happens if we have 4 conditions are met. The first condition The first condition is that goods must be shipped frequently. If we do not receive products on a regular basis, it becomes all of our waste considerations become magnified. If I expect a delivery every day, I only need to order goods to get me to the next day. I don't have to overproduce, or I don't have to worry about inventory beyond one day. I don't have to worry about underutilizing the resources that are on hand for more than one day. However, if goods are delivered on a weekly basis, I then have to worry about how many products I'll use during the course of a single week, which is, by definition, 7 times harder than a single day. If we receive goods monthly, quarterly, or yearly, all of our waste concerns are magnified exponentially by the amount of time we have to consider. We need to focus much more carefully on planning, much more carefully on sales forecasts, and much more carefully on where these goods will be kept in inventory. Also, with short lead times, we require short lead times. What does that mean? Short lead times refers to the amount of time between order placement, and order fulfillment. If I order, even if I receive goods very quickly, oh, another technical problem. Oh, sorry everybody. Okay, my tripod isn't particularly steady. Oh, no. Hopefully that works a little better. Okay. Now, short lead times requires that we're in a situation where from the moment I place the order until the moment the order is delivered to me, I am able to minimize that time. Our suppliers are able to minimize that time. From when I place the order until when it is delivered, that time must be minimized. If I place an order and that product cannot be made and delivered to me for months, it's a scenario where we cannot efficiently expect frequent delivery of those products. So short lead times leads to efficient delivery of products, which ultimately benefits us because of minimizing inventory, underutilization of resources, minimal waiting. Next. We expect our goods to arrive on schedule. If we do not have a good relationship with our supplier, if our supplier is inefficient in meeting our demands time effectively, then all of our concerns, all of our plans largely get ignored. It doesn't matter how carefully I plan my schedule. If I'm in a scenario where I expect a good on Monday, but it doesn't arrive until Wednesday, all of my plans, all of the effort I've put into putting this together is wasted. That is ultimately very harmful to our organization because it makes all of our planning and all of the resources we've devoted to planning wasted. If I order 10 parts to manufacture good A, and the parts arrive on Wednesday instead of Monday, from Monday until Wednesday, my employees have been idle, my machinery has been idle. I can't manufacture if I don't have those products. So we need to arrive on schedule. And finally, we need our supplier to provide high quality goods. And that's two different things. So number one, our order must be of high quality. Not necessarily the goods, but the order. What we ordered must be delivered. Otherwise, again, our planning efforts are largely for naught. They don't mean anything because the goods were not produced or the goods we expected were not delivered. If I order 10 parts to manufacture product A, but only 8 parts arrive, that's better than nothing, but it's not what we ordered. And if it's not what we ordered, we have waste that occurs in terms of waiting, in terms of defects, in terms of underutilization of resources, maybe transportation. If we produce 5 products now and 5 products later, that's 2 production or 2 transportation runs that have to occur. The second way that we require high quality the goods we order must be usable. Let's look at a classic grocery store example. I order 5 kilograms of apples. Now, I'm ordering 5 kilograms of apples. How many kilograms do I expect to pay for? Obviously, I'm paying for the 5 kilograms I ordered. However, if 4.5 kilograms are usable and 0.5 kilograms are not, right away we can see the obvious waste that occurs. We need the products we order to be usable. If they are not, it doesn't help us. We cannot in any way use those goods, so that is waste. 0.5 kilograms are thrown directly into the garbage. Obviously, that's waste. It works in any scenario. If we're manufacturing coffee, if we are serving in a restaurant, if the goods that are sent to us to be served, the goods that are sent to us to be used aren't usable, we can't sell them, that's waste. And ultimately very harmful to our organization. So to be a lean system, to use lean systems, we require close supplier ties because we want to focus on low inventory levels. To do that, we require 4 different qualities. The first, they must be shipped frequently when we expect regular orders. Otherwise, we need to keep excess goods in inventory. That creates waste. We need short lead times. From when I order until the product is delivered, we need that time to be minimized. Because otherwise, we have to account for that wasted lead time. Number 3, goods must arrive on schedule. In order to effectively plan sales and manufacturing processes, we need goods on hand. If they are not arriving on schedule, we do not have sufficient inventory levels. We will not be able to sell or produce according to our expectations. And finally, goods must be of high quality, meaning what we order must arrive. If I order 3 bottles of Coca-Cola, I get 2 on Monday and 1 on Wednesday. That's something that must be accounted for in our sales strategies. But if we don't expect that to happen, we can't account for it. If we can't account for it, it leads to waste. And finally, goods must be usable. If they aren't, that is automatic scrap waste, which no matter what we do, cannot benefit our company in terms of revenue and in terms of sales. So number 1, we require close supplier ties. Number 2, small lot sizes. We'll talk about that a little more in the next lesson. But one special circumstance that we have in terms of close supplier ties is vendor managed inventory. This is a unique scenario where the vendor, the supplier, actually comes into our organization, and rather than us worrying about supplies, they take care of themselves. It might be a car part supplier who works in the factory, manages all of our supplies from their operation, and allows them to carefully manage our inventory levels. It's a scenario that largely only occurs with very large operations, but it can increase efficiently exponentially because they know all of these 4 conditions intimately because it's their operation. Anyways, that's it for today's lesson, or this session. So I'll see all of you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you soon.